deportations. These deportations of ex-convicts are what led to the surge of gangs in Central America. Now, ironically, this surge in gang activity in Central America has led to another flood of refugees and, with the advent of the Donald Trump administration, the hyper-politicization of immigration as a catch-all for every U.S. problem. At the ground level, Norman's level, the reality obliterates any moral clarity and political platitudes. He is the first to admit that he is no angel, and neither are his fellow gang members. He and several brothers and half-brothers entered the gang, pledging allegiance to something they call La Bestia, the beast. But the gang is also a surrogate family, one that replaced his real family, which, by the time he was a teenager, was spread across 1,000 miles. This surrogate family is what the MS-13 calls El Barrio, roughly translated in this context as community. This is the gang's central paradox. The MS-13 is a surrogate family and a vicious criminal organization. My experience with gangs has been through a journalistic, policy-oriented, and academic lens. After spending the previous 15 years in Latin America working for major news outlets, I co-founded Insight Crime in 2010, a think tank focused on organized crime in the Americas. Part of my job is to cover the gangs in Central America, specifically those operating in El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala. I am also a senior fellow at the Center for Latin American and Latino Studies at American University, where I recently co-directed a 3-year study funded by the U.S. Justice Department on the MS-13 in El Salvador, the greater Washington, D.C., and Los Angeles areas. I mention these projects only because they have led to numerous and regular interactions with gang members, communities and families hit hard by gang violence, law enforcement corralling the gangs, and policymakers trying to deal with them. This book is a distillation of these interactions, a history of the MS-13 as told through the human lives they've made and destroyed, the victims and victimizers, the undocumented migrants and those who deport them, the gangs and the police who fight them. The story of the MS-13 is difficult to fit into one book. I believe the characters in this book are representative of the issues I wanted to cover, and they allowed me to tell the history of the gang. But there are gaps in research in this work that will be obvious to the specialist and general reader alike. Honduras and Guatemala, two vital hubs of MS-13 activity, are absent, for example. My treatment and understanding of the role of women, as well as the role that notions of masculinity play in recruitment, cohesion, and violence of the gang, are also largely superficial. These are all potential books on their own, and I would encourage more work on this subject. That is because the MS-13 is not just a gang problem. It is a manifestation of our collective failures across a huge geographic expanse. Gang members need to take personal responsibility for what they do, but we are playing an active role in perpetuating this violent, antisocial community. As a very smart person once said to me about marginalized criminal groups, they will stop biting us when we stop treating them like dogs. December 2019. Introduction. Judging Norman. 1. Sir, please state your name for the record. Norman. Footnote. For security reasons, his name and those of all his relatives have been changed, as well as the names of his gang clique, names of colleagues, and other information that could potentially compromise his identity. Where were you born? In El Salvador. It was July 2017. Norman was dressed in an orange jumpsuit, sitting at a table in a dimly lit U.S. immigration court. He was 42, but he spoke with the tired cadence of an elderly man. A judge, flanked by an interpreter, scrutinized him from the podium. Norman's legal representative continued his questions. Tell me, sir.